Once upon a time, there was the greatest patriotic wrestling pay-per-view that the United States ever saw. And summer was a time when fans used to get super psyched for the event known as the Great American Bash. And don't worry, I get it, you guys hate the history of videos. Aris Quinones can get away with it, but I can't, that's fine. It's okay, alright. Anyway, so instead of one of those, today I decided to offer something different. Instead of history of, I decided I was going to present to you some highlights of the most patriotic and historic pay-per-view events of all time. Because today, Dave knows 7 reasons why the Great American Bash was so great. The Great American Bash is the only wrestling pay-per-view to air under all 3 of these companies, the NWA, WCW, and WWE. While Starrcade might technically be the oldest pay-per-view event, and many fans, including myself, are holding out hope that someday Halloween Havoc will make a comeback, the Great American Bash is the only WCW pay-per-view that actually crossed over after the purchase of WCW. Many fans know that Vince McMahon tends to have a habit of not celebrating things that aren't born of the WWE, which made it all the more surprising that this ever even happened in the first place. And while the WWE may not have turned out any really great versions of the Bash, it is still remarkable that this ever occurred at all. One of the best big men of all time, the man known as Big Van Vader, made his first appearance on WCW TV on July 7th, 1990 in the Baltimore Arena at the Great American Bash. He made short work of Tom Zenk in his debut match after walking out to the arena wearing his awesome smoking elephant mask. Vader had previously spent some time wrestling in Japan prior to this, and he would only be used sparingly by WCW after this event until about 1992. But it was clear from that moment on that World Championship Wrestling would never be the same ever again. On the topic of Big Van Vader, in 1995 he was stripped of the United States title. The new champ for the vacant strap would be decided by means of a 16-man tournament, which would culminate at the Great American Bash. Now, only one match in the tournament was actually aired on the pay-per-view, but the matches leading up to that were some solid pairings. The quarterfinals saw Steve Austin take on the Macho Man and Sting going against Paul Orndorff, and the Patriot lost in the first round to Ric Flair. That's right, a character called the Patriot lost in the first round of the United States title tournament that was going to culminate at the Great American Bash, which is kind of funny if you ask me. Now, in an odd twist, during the semifinals, Ric Flair and Randy Savage fought to a no contest, and therefore were both eliminated. As a result, Sting vs. Meng, a semifinal match, became the final bout to determine the new United States champion, and Sting won. Now, this was also the first Great American Bash since 1992, as the pay-per-view itself took a few years off. But at that 1992 Bash, the pay-per-view had yet another tournament as well. This time, it would be a tag team tournament that would crown the brand new NWA World Tag Team Champions. WCW had already begun its emancipation from the National Wrestling Alliance, and was rebranding their titles as WCW titles. So they decided to present their own NWA World Tag Team Championships. But surprisingly, they decided that WCW was actually going to be allowed to air the 16-team tournament to declare the inaugural champions, and to let them actually control the titles for the time being. Now, to sell the idea of this really being a world championship, in addition to WCW tag teams, they included many other wrestlers from around the globe. And unlike the US title tournament, much of this tournament was actually featured on the pay-per-view itself. And the finals of this tournament saw Dustin Rhodes and Barry Windham fight in a losing effort to the Miracle Violence Connection, Terry Bam Bam Gordy, and Dr. Death, Steve Williams. The last show, as of now, calling itself the Great American Bash, happened on July 3rd, 2012, and it took place in the American Bank Center in Corpus Christi, Texas, and aired as a special live episode of SmackDown. While I will admit that WWE never really did right by the event, and the Great American Bash definitely deserves to be a pay-per-view, but it was still pretty cool to give this away on regular TV. Now remember, at this time, SmackDown was not yet a live show, and pay-per-view events were not only $9.99 a month thanks to the WWE Network, so it was still a very big deal. Similar to Clash of the Champions and Saturday Night Main Event, this was almost like having a free pay-per-view that was more accessible to common fans. However, this was not exactly a full pay-per-view caliber show, as there were no actual titles on the line, but there was a 20-man battle royal in the main event to determine the guest general manager for the following week's SmackDown. And the winner of this battle royal, Long Island IZ, Zack Ryder. So while this may have been a huge disservice to the pay-per-view event itself, it was still a nice, fun, casual show. There's nothing like Maryland in the summer. Now, there are some pay-per-view events that find themselves strangely attached to unofficial host cities. Brooklyn has been a hotspot for NXT summer takeovers, and many Halloween Havocs took place in Las Vegas, Nevada. And the Baltimore Arena in Baltimore, Maryland has been the host of the Great American Bash 8 times. Now, I am a really big fan of pay-per-views having a connection with specific destinations. After all, I've made it pretty clear how strongly I feel about the connection between Madison Square Garden and WrestleMania. So even if you're not from Baltimore, but you like the idea of a pay-per-view having a frequent home base, I think you might be able to appreciate the fact that many bashes hailed from Maryland. While the last bash wasn't a pay-per-view, much to the anger of many fans, it should be noted that it wasn't always a pay-per-view to begin with. In 1986 and 1987, the Great American Bash was actually a traveling tour. In 1986, the GAB went everywhere from Washington, D.C. to Charlotte to Jacksonville. The first tour began on July 1st, 1986 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and concluded its 13-show tour on August 2nd in Atlanta, Georgia. During this tour, Ric Flair was the reigning NWA World Champion. That is, until the July 26th show when he lost the title to Dusty Rhodes in Greensboro, North Carolina. The following year, the bash actually ran throughout July. It started in Landover, Maryland at the Capitol Center on July 2nd and concluded on July 31st in Miami, Florida's Orange Bowl Arena. Speaking of the Great American Bash 1987, this was the very first appearance of the War Games match. While not only is he credited for creating the Great American Bash concept itself, but the War Games match type was also devised by the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. As the story goes, Dusty was inspired to create the match after watching the movie Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. So on Independence Day 1987 at the Omni Arena in Atlanta, Georgia, fans would see the debut of War Games, the match beyond. And this tour has the distinct honor of not only hosting the first War Games match, but also the second as well. And Dusty was on the winning team both times. Dusty Rhodes, Nikita Koloff, Paul Ellering, and the Road Warriors defeated the Horsemen, Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and Lex Luger, alongside with J.J. Dillon in the first match. The second War Games match was fairly similar, but Dillon was ringside instead of being a competitor, and he was replaced by the Big Boss Man, who was then going by the name War Machine, on the July 31st, 1987 show. Well, there you go. There are 7 highlights of what made the Great American Bash just so great. But what did you think? Tell me what some of your favorite Great American Bash moments are in the comments, and don't forget to share this video and to give me a big thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching, and this has been Dave Knows.